So many of you have been watching my videos and my live streams about online teaching, and you've been telling me that you like the activities and the techniques that I've been suggesting. But people keep asking me this question: in what order should I do these activities? Is there a perfect structure for an online lesson? And is there a lesson plan template that I can steal from you? Well, I'm sorry to say there's no magic pill for online lessons. I think for me, every lesson is a little bit different. But I've sat down and I've had a think about this. I've come up with a nice, easy lesson plan structure. This is a structure that I follow quite a lot. I just hadn't put it into words until this moment. So here is my structure for an online lesson. So first, a little caveat. If I told you that I do all of these activities in every lesson, I'd be lying to you. So I teach quite short lessons in my school. So I normally chop and change this lesson plan and do some of the activities, but not all of them. So feel free to chop and change this lesson plan based on your own needs. So I plan my lesson with these issues in mind. Based on my experience, I speculate that these are the reasons why kids go silent or why Zoom lessons bomb. Most of all, I want the kids to feel comfortable with me as the teacher, because I think they can be a bit weirded out by a guy on a screen when they've never met him before. And I don't want them to become bored and overloaded with information. So the first stage I want you to do, and this is actually my favourite stage, is the 5-minute chit chat with the early birds. If the kids haven't come from another lesson, and especially if you're teaching the first lesson of the day, I want you to log into the meeting 5 minutes before and just chat with the kids who have arrived early. This stage is really important because this is your chance to build rapport with your students. I just want you to have very relaxed and informal chit chat, nothing too heavy. And I try very hard to implant a bit of humour into this stage. So usually when I join the meeting, I'll say good morning. One kid will always reply like this: "Good morning, Mr. Thomas." So I will respond by saying, "Ah, Anson, you sound like you just got out of bed. What time did you wake up? I bet it was 2 minutes ago." And then we'll get into who got up the earliest, that kind of thing. I'll guess what time they got up. We'll talk about, do they like waking up early and going to school, or do they enjoy having a lie-in and staying at home? I'll also have a bit of a joke at my expense. So normally if I've got the first online lesson in the morning, I haven't showered and I'm looking a bit scruffy. So I'll say something like this. I'll say, okay, remember there are 3 rules today. Rule number 1, participate. Rule number 2, be ready to answer questions. And rule number 3, don't laugh at my house, my Wi-Fi connection, or my pineapple hairstyle. I think that because Zoom lessons are new to them, the fact that they don't really know how to behave can cause a bit of tension. So I use this humour to break the tension and also show them that I'm a human being who you can feel comfortable interacting with. Certain kids will clock on to the fact that I join the meeting early and we have a bit of banter. You end up getting kind of a cult following of kids who deliberately log in early so they can have a chat with me. They're clearly stuck at home just dying to chat with someone. Sometimes when I'm going a bit mad at home, chatting to the kids really helps my mental health as well. Now it's the official time to start the lesson. All of your kids should be here. So the first thing I want you to do is either of these 2 activities. The whole class check-in or the mindfulness movement activity. So even though I've checked in with the kids who arrived early, I want to check that everybody's feeling okay. If you're teaching kids online, they're probably suffering more than adults are. They're probably locked up at home for longer than we are. And this is probably one of 10 lessons they'll have that day on Zoom. So I'll usually just show a slide like this, and then they type in the chat the corresponding number. So I'm just doing this activity to allow them to get their frustrations off their chest, and just to acknowledge that this is a bit of a rubbish situation for them. And although they might have negative opinions of online learning, I'm not in opposition to them here. I don't like this situation either, and I have empathy with them. So then we got our mindfulness movement activity. Because the kids are in their home environment and not a school, they might not be in the right zone to learn yet. Especially if they're feeling a bit distracted by the problems going on in the world. So I want to ease them into the lesson, and I want to get them in the right state of mind to focus and learn. Now, you might be thinking, mindfulness, isn't that a bit of a Zen thing? Don't worry, I'm not trying to get them to point their first chakras at the sun. This is the definition of mindfulness. Now, one thing to avoid here is saying, now we're going to do a mindfulness activity. They'll say, oh, that's so boring. So all I do is I tell them I want to get them moving, because that will get them into the present moment. Certain websites that I really like using for this, so you choose which one you like based on the age of your kids. This one, where the kids get to go on different yoga adventures. And this one, which is kind of a PE workout game. You could just use these, but if you want an extra challenge, I challenge you to try and link your mindfulness activity to the lesson aim. Maybe you could ask them a question to review what they learned last time. And if the answer is yes, they have to do squats. And if the answer is no, they have to do star jumps. So now they've had their fun, they've done their mindfulness activity, but we have to transition them now into the stage where they can do some deep work. I want my students to know by this stage that this is going to be a lesson, and I'm not just filling the meeting with a load of jumpy party games to distract from the fact that I have no idea how to teach my damn curriculum using Zoom. So now I want to set the expectations for the rest of the lesson. So I'll show them a slide like this. I'll say something like this: okay class, I know that online learning isn't the best situation, but it's very important that we don't let it spoil our learning. You will be expected to focus on the lesson, to participate actively, and to ask and answer questions. Those are the 3 rules I like, because I really want to reinforce the fact that they are going to be active and they're not going to sit there and watch my lesson like a movie. After students are aware of the expectations, we then actually need to introduce the learning point. Now this is the part where there's a danger that the teacher will start talking too much and the students will switch off. So that's why I've called this section the student-centered teaching stage. So I'm going to use my students to teach the teaching point. This is going to be my teaching point today in my lesson for second language speakers of English. They are going to learn adjectives to describe their city. Now what I'm going to ask them to do is move their tablets and phones and show me the view out of their window. Once I've got all the students showing me their views, I will ask one student to keep their phone pointing out of the window, and then I'll elicit some adjectives, and then we'll annotate over the view. So I'm trying to keep them really involved, and again, the fact that I'm giving them a chance to share will help build that rapport that we really need. So that's one suggestion. Other suggestions for the student-centered teaching moment could be using the Annotate. They just brainstorm as many words as they know. Maybe they could take you on a tour around their house. Maybe they could share one of their most treasured possessions. Or maybe you could do another kind of movement activity to replace that earlier stage where they're miming or something like that to the word that you're trying to introduce. So I've introduced my main teaching point. My next stage now is my controlled practice stage. So just like a normal lesson, they need to be doing controlled activities to make sure that they've grasped that point before you move on to something more challenging. I want to make sure at this stage that they're all participating. So I'm going to use Neopod for this. I'm going to use the matching pairs activity. So they're going to match that adjective to a description. Now there are two things to think about here. So first, keep the activity simple. Because the problem is, once you lose a kid in an online lesson, it's very hard to get them back. So you don't want to be losing kids this early in the lesson. And the second thing is involve everybody. So for this kind of activity, I recommend an online quiz website. Other example of practice activities you could do could be a multiple choice quiz using one of these websites. Maybe students could be using Annotate, so maybe you share some questions, or maybe you share a screenshot of the textbook and students annotate to answer the questions. My next stage is going to be feedback from the practice stage. It's important you have a lot of feedback in online lessons because, again, once you've lost a kid, it's very hard to get them back. So I'm going to share the whiteboard in Zoom, and I'm going to use Annotate to type some common errors that they're making in the lesson, and then the students can annotate themselves and correct these errors. So once students have done enough practice activities, and I must stress that one practice activity might not be enough, you might need a few, then we can move on to the big productive task. Oh wait, have we not considered that the students have been sitting down in their chairs for a long time by now? So let's get them out of their chairs and let's get them moving. Let's have a simple movement brain break. Now in the recent lesson I taught, I played a song earlier in the lesson. Then I realized my students were becoming a bit fidgety. So what I did was I went back to the song and I told them, I'm trying to work on my floss, that floss dance, but I'm rubbish at it, so teach me how to floss. Let's play the song again and we're going to floss along to it. So I had the whole class doing the floss and everyone was having fun, and when I moved on to the next activity, their focus was back. Then the final activity is going to be the big productive task. So those practice activities are building them up to something big. Now in this productive task, you want students to be generating what they've learned by themselves. So I think there are two ways to do it. They could generate what they've learned through speaking to other students and producing something in a group, or they could generate what they've learned by doing some independent freer writing. So if you want to get them in a group, I think now is the ideal stage to do a breakout room activity. As you'll know from my other videos, a rookie error is doing a breakout room too early in the lesson without building them up to it. I think breakout rooms are perfect for the big productive task. And to support them with breakout rooms, you should use a Google Doc. I have a whole video on this, how to set up breakout rooms in a way that keeps everyone involved and productive. So check out the link above. But in today's lesson, I'm not going to use a breakout room because I think it's not that suitable. So in this lesson, I'm going to choose Padlet. The students are now going to find a photo online of a famous city scene, and then they're going to write some sentences about it using the language that I taught them today. I think Padlet is nice for your productive task at the end, because students can share their work easily and they can jazz up their work by adding pictures, which will again motivate them to do the task to a high standard. Again, I will do another feedback task after this using the Annotate feature on the whiteboard. So now I'll focus on mistakes that they made in the Padlet, and they'll correct their own and each other's mistakes. And the last stage, of course, like any other lesson, is the reflection stage. So I'll pull up something like this. Again, students are using Annotate, everyone is involved, and I'm really trying to maximize the opportunities for everybody to participate. So that's my proposed framework for an online lesson. I'm actually back teaching online as my school's just been suspended. So I'm going to be doing more experimenting with these techniques that I've proposed and try out some new ideas. And I'll be reporting back to you with my latest finding. So if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do it now. You really want to be in the know with my latest developments on online learning. Thank you and see you in the next video.